Hello, it's Julie from Spellbound, and today I'm going to show you how to make one of these lovely little mistletoe brooches. Now, it's got a pin on the back so you can wear it on your jacket, on your hat, or I think it'd be rather nice pinned to a napkin ring for your Christmas table. Now, I'm using the same technique as used on the mistletoe garland, which is a large decoration kit that we sell at Spellbound. And actually I've made these from the leftovers from my kit. I hope you give it a go. It's a really simple technique to make a really effective Christmas motif. These are the materials I'm going to need to make the brooch. Now I've got two colours of green seed beads in a size 10. I've got a nice sharp lime colour with a silver lining. That will be the main colour for the leaves. And I've got a size 6 to match the lime green. I'm also going to introduce a paler leaf, but you can do it all in the same colour if you want to. If you'd like a paler leaf, you'll also need the size 10 bead in a paler green and a size 6 that's suitable to tone with it. And I've got a lustered crystal bead. I've got some little red seed beads in a size 10 to make my bow, and I've got some berries. I'm going to use some size 6mm pearl beads in a white, and I've also got these lovely sparkle metallic in the same 6mm size. I've got a brooch pin. Now this is just a 1" or a 25mm normal badge back or brooch pin, and it's got a little safety catch on. I think that's quite important. And this is our wire. I've got some 0.5mm soft chartreuse green wire. I'm going to be using about 1.5 meters in total, and I've got some red wire. Now the red wire isn't absolutely essential, but if you've done the mistletoe garland, you'll have some of the red wire left over too. This is 0.315mm, and it's in this vivid red colour. If you haven't got the red wire though, you can use a bit more of the green wire. It's not essential that you especially get the new red wire. I'm going to move the red wire out of the way for the moment and the brooch pin and get started on the leaves. Now to make the first leaf, I've cut 75 centimetres of the 0.5mm green wire, and I've threaded on 28 of the lime green, the sharp green size 10 seed beads. I've put them right in the middle of the wire, and I'm going to twist to secure a loop. So I'm going to cross the wire over just a couple of millimetres down from where the beads finish. I'm going to pinch at that crossover point, and then I'm going to flip the loop over twice. Now that causes a little twist to form, and the pinch stops the twist travelling further down. So I've got a nice neat leaf loop to start my leaf pair. Now I say leaf pair because mistletoe leaves always come in pairs. So I've pre-threaded on the beads for my second leaf. Now importantly, before I put on the 28 lime green size 10 seed beads, I put on a size 6 seed bead. You can see it there. It's quite a bit larger, and I'm going to push that right up against the base of the first twist. This is my 28 seed beads for the second leaf, and I'm going to make a loop. Bring the wire round, make a loop, and you can see that I'm making the crossover position at the base of the loop, just this side of the new size 6 seed bead, the large seed bead, because that needs to sit in the middle. So I'm going to pinch in between the size 6 seed bead and my new loop, and I'm going to flip over twice to secure the loop. So now I've got 2 leaf loops. I'm going to make some stem as well at this stage, so I'm going to bring the two sides of the wire together and I'm going to pinch about 10 to 12 millimeters down. So I'm pinching to hold the two sides together. You can see the sides of the wire are parallel. Pinch firmly and flip over the leaf loops you've made until you get a nice neat twist. Now, to make the twist really neat, as you're twisting, pull between your two hands. There's a little bit of tension set up there, and that makes those twists all the neater. Right, so now we have 2 leaf loops and a stem. Now, mistletoe leaves are quite narrow and they're quite fleshy, so we need to add a central vein. I'm going to pop that down for a second and pick up a second piece of wire. Now, this is the same 0.5mm chartreuse green wire, and I've got about 12 to 15 centimetres. That's probably a bit too much that I've cut there. About 12 centimetres is ideal. Now I need to thread this through this size 6 seed bead in the middle. So you might need to bend your new leaves out the way a minute, especially if, like me, you've done your twists very tight. It's quite hard to find the hole in the size 6 seed bead. But there we are, straight through, nice and easy. And I'm going to put the wire through the bead so that I've got ends of equal length. So that's sitting in the middle of my new piece of wire. Now, to secure the piece of wire, I'm going to twist it around those little ropes that we made at the base of the loops. And I'm going to point the wire down the middle of our leaf loop. Now I need some beads for this wire, so I'm going to put on 12 of our lime green beads. These are the size 10 again. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, this is the joy of beading. You're just counting to yourself. It's very relaxing and you make something beautiful. Right, so I've got 12 seed beads on it. At the moment you can see it's too long for the loop, but equally the loop is too fat to make a mistletoe leaf. We need to make it a bit narrower. So I'm going to pinch it in, and because we've got 28 seed beads on the main loop, that's an even number. It means at the apex of the loop you end up with a little gap. I'm going to lay my new wire into that gap. You can see it just about fits now. Now if it's not fitting perfectly, you can either add or take off a seed bead. There we go, so that's going into that gap. Now I'm going to wind it on. I'm going to pass through the loop, make sure it's nice and tight, and pull through. And you can really pull firmly, press down with your thumb to make sure everything's held in tight, and I'm going to repeat that. That's really secure. Now I can use wire cutters, which I've got here, to trim off, but that always leaves a little burr. So it's easier to fatigue the wire and then it'll break off where we want it to finish. So I'm going to put my thumbnail against where I want the wire to finish. I'm going to set up a tension between my two hands. I'm gripping about 2 centimetres away, and I twist and pull. And the wire work hardens and becomes brittle where we've been twisting it. So it's just there and it comes off. No nasty burr. So now we need to do the same on the other side. And it'll be another 12 seed beads. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's, oh, I think that's 12, 4, 8, 12, there's our 12 beads. Again, you can see the loop's too long, so just squeeze it in gently. Now that is still one bead too long, so I'm going to take one bead off so I get a better fit. There it is going into the gap, and I'm going to twist it off. And now I'm going to twist and break the wire. There we go. Make the loop into a better shape. And now we make it into a mistletoe pair of leaves. And they need a bit of a bend in them. So bring them together and bend them so they're a bit like little bird's wings. And that's our first pair of mistletoe leaves. Now I'm going to make a second pair here on its own stem. So to do that I need to separate the sides of the wire, and you need to look for the longest end of the wire you've got left, because one end will be slightly longer than the other because you made the second leaf with one half of the wire only. Now I have pre-threaded the seed beads for my new leaf. As you can see, I used a sneaky little bit of paper to divide them off, and I've threaded on 28 seed beads for the first loop of my new leaf. Now I want to leave enough wire to make a stem, so I'm going to leave about 2 centimetres, no, that's too much, isn't it? About 12 to 14 millimetres is better, I think. And I've threaded those 28 seed beads onto the longest end of the wire. I'm going to make my loop. It's really important to maintain that gap, otherwise your new leaf pair won't have a stem. Pinch and twist. There's our first leaf loop. Here are my pre-threaded beads. So I've got my size 6 seed bead, which you mustn't forget or it won't work, and another 28 seed beads. Make our loop. Remember, the crossover needs to be this side of the size 6 seed bead. That one's just escaped, so I'll remake it. That's it. Pinch and do your 2 flips, and that gives you your 2 leaf loops. And now we're going to do the centre vein again with a new piece of wire about 12 centimetres long. As before, I've done my twist so tight I just need to move the leaves out of the way to get my wire through. So the size 6 bead is in the middle of my new piece of wire. I'm going to twist it on to those little ropes we've just made either side of the size 6 seed bead, and then I put on my 12 additional beads again. As you've probably heard in the background, the end of the wire keeps catching on things around my work table, and that's because my work table is always terribly cluttered with projects on the go. I would suggest, if you're doing wire work, that you clear your table off first, and then you don't get all the ends of the wire catching on everything as you turn your work around. There's our 12 seed beads. Let's make the loop nice and narrow. There's the gap, it's fitting into the gap nicely, and twist off. And then we're going to break that end of the wire off, and it does break really easily. It's only because we're putting lots of stress on it, but it always, I find, it's very satisfying to finish off the wire like that because it's so neat. So that's 4 on, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I find it very difficult to count silently, so I do apologise for whispering numbers at you. Right, there's our 12 beads on. Let's make the loop nice and narrow. That fits nicely into the gap. Let's twist off again. pull those twists really tight. Give it a good tug. The wire is very strong unless you put it under stress, and we only put it under stress when we want to break it off. There we go. That's our leaf pair again. Now, I should have done the stem first, but it doesn't matter. We bring this little piece of straight wire we left from the base of the first twist parallel to the end of the wire that we've made the leaf loops with, and twist to the junction. So I'm pinching at the junction and twisting to the junction, and it's really important that those two twists meet so there's no straight wire left between them, and then it'll be nice and firm. Right, let's get our new leaf pair into some shape. So I'll bring them together, and then I'll put a bit of a bend into them, and now we've got two beaded mistletoe leaves. Now obviously mistletoe has those lovely little white berries on it, so I'm going to introduce a couple of white berries now. Now I've got one end that's a lot shorter than the other now because I've made the whole of that second leaf group from one side of the wire. So I've got a long end, and I'm going to thread my first berry onto that. I'm going to use a pearl against the green because it gives a nice contrast and looks like a real mistletoe berry. I'm going to make a very small loop of wire to support the new berry bead. I'm going to pinch at that junction where I've just brought those other two twists together and give a little twist, and that's connected the berry. I'm going to add another berry. You'll find if you look at photographs of mistletoe or real mistletoe that the berries are often in pairs, and they tend to come at the junction of two leaves. It's not always the case, but in the majority of cases that's what you see. So there's our small loop again, and twist to join the second berry on. Now because we put them on individual stems, we can move them to where we want them to be. Right, now we need some main stem. So I bring the two sides of the wire together. I'm going to have about that much main stem, which is 12 to 14 millimeters. So I'm going to pinch there and twist to the pinch. There we go. That's the start of our mistletoe sprig. Now I've made another little sprig using the paler green seed beads and the lustrous size 6 in the middle to tone in, and here I've just added two of the silver sparkle beads as berries at the base of the little stem. Now having pre-prepared that, I can bring that in to my other two leaves, and you can see that the spray is starting to come together. I think I need a tiny bit more twist on the stem on the green one, so I'm just going to give it another couple of twists to make it a bit longer. Bring that back in, and yes, I think that gives me better spacing. So with all of the four ends together at the base of the silver berries, I'm going to twist, oops, to make a little rope. And I should say that the paler green berries and, the paler green leaves and the silver berries were made on about 50 centimetres of wire. So as you can see, you don't need very much wire to make a simple little spray. Now we're going to add that onto a brooch pin. Now here's my brooch pin, and as you can see it's got this plain silver front, so I want to cover as much of that silver front as I can with green wire so that it almost disappears. I'm going to compare the length of my brooch pin up to the twisted section I've made here. It's a little bit short at the moment, so I'm going to do a tiny bit more twist with all four ends. And let's compare it now. That's just about right. Now I'm going to attach this so that the brooch pin points downwards away from my spray, but you might want to do it the other way. It depends what you plan to clip it to, whether you want it to hang downwards or upwards. This time I'm going to have mine pointing upwards. Now at the end of my twisted rope I'm going to make a bend in all four lengths of wire. Now, I'm actually going to use a pair of pliers to help me do that, but you could use a thin pencil or a knitting needle. I'm just going to hold all four together and just bend the wire ends around so I get a nice neat bend. But you can see it could have been a knitting needle, it could have been a skewer from the kitchen. It's just something to help you get that nice neat end. I'm going to undo the brooch pin and I'm going to wind these four ends that I've got left over the brooch pin and over the twist I've just made. You can see I've opened the brooch pin, position the loop, and then we start to wind. It's a bit awkward to start with, just to get the position right. As you can see, these untwisted ends fan out, so you end up with four wires that want to sit parallel, and that helps you to make the work neat. I'm getting a bit of a tangle with the pin there. Once you're on, there we go. You can see now. Once you're on, it stops wibbling about. It's much easier to keep it neat. There we are. That's quite a neat binding, and it's covered most of the silver front of the brooch pin. So you just have to sort of go for it, don't be scared of it, and just wind it around. Now I've got all these wire ends now I need to neaten off. Now some of them I might wind back up the bottom of the rope and then twist and pull them off. Some I might tuck down the side of here and wind and break them off. Now I'll just finish off all those ends and then I'll come back and show you how to make the bow. As you can see, I've finished off the ends and we've got a really nice neat covering over the brooch pin. It's really firm as well. Now actually I quite like it like that, but you can, if you wish, add a little red bow as we've got on the original sample, and that's just made with size 10 red seed beads, and as I said earlier you can use a finer red wire, a 0.315, or you can use your green wire. I'll pop that out of the way a moment because we make the bow separately, and I've got about 50 centimetres of red wire here, and to save time I've pre-threaded some red beads. Now I'm going to find the middle of the wire, which is there, and I want 20 seed beads in the middle, so that's 5, 10, 15, 17, 20 seed beads, and I'm going to make a loop. This is going to be the bow loop, or the first bow loop. So I'm going to do the same as we did with the mistletoe. Pinch a tiny distance down and twist a couple of times to make our bow loop. Now I'm going to need another 20 seed beads to make the second one. So that's 7, 10, 16, 20. I'm going to do the same loop again. Now this time we haven't got a bead in the middle. It's just 2 loops together. I'm going to make sure I pinch right against the base of the previous twist. That's our second bow loop made. Now I need to do the tails. Now I've threaded 10 seed beads on to make the first tail. Now if you're doing this with the green wire, you won't be able to do this technique. You'll have to finish off just down here because it's a little bit too thick to do this next stage. But if you've got a finer wire, a 0.315, you take off 1 bead at the bottom and you just move it away from the previous 9, and you pass back up all the other 9 to come out in between the 2 loops, and you pull and pull and pull, and that little bead comes up as an anchor, and there's your tail. Now if you're using the thicker green wire, you'll just have to put a little loop at the end and trim off the excess wire. Now I need another 10 for the other bow tail. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we do the same again. So we don't want to go back through the 10th bead, so we just move it away slightly, pass back through the other 9. There we are, coming out in the middle again. And if I hold everything really tight up against the centre of the bow, that anchor bead pulls up nice and neat. And there we have our little bow. Now we're going to join it on to our brooch pin. So I'm going to undo the brooch pin again because we need to be winding through that gap. Position our bow. Now before I do that, I'm just going to put a little twist at the back just to make sure everything's secure. That's it, that's better. Otherwise it tends to wobble. Offer it up and bind it on. And bind it on with both ends. And then we're going to bind across the centre as well. This one is to come around and go through the centre as well. Right, now I've got 2 red wire ends and my bow attached, but the bow's looking a little bit blank in the middle, so I'm going to use these wire ends just to add a couple of beads in the middle. So I'm going to anchor it first by wrapping it around the base of the loop. I'm going to put on a few seed beads. You might need 2, you might need 3. I think I only need 2. I'm going to stretch across the centre and twist it off at the base of the other bow. That's better. That just covers up the crossover in the middle. If you wanted to, you could go the other way as well to make a little X shape in the centre. I need to make sure my red wire ends are nice and firm before I get rid of the excess wire. So I'm going to come behind the bow and make sure it's wound in really tight, and then the same way to break it off, and this one too. There we go. And then we just have to make it into an attractive bow shape, because I'm sure like mine, yours will be a little bit squished because you've been holding it rather firmly. And there we go. One little mistletoe brooch pin, which you can put on your jacket, put on your hat, or perhaps put on a napkin for the Christmas table. I hope you've enjoyed this simple wirework technique and you give it a go. Thank you very much.